you do to the proclamation? All right, good evening. I call this meeting to order.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Ms. Thomas, roll call, please.
Dr. Bellamy,
Here.
Ms. Hill,
Here.
Ms. Walker,
Present.
Mr. Signer,
Here.
Ms. Galvin.
Here.
Are there any announcements?
I think we have one here. This is and I see Mr. Alexander is in the room for something coming up. But the second annual CYM Day of Observance, Closing Your Mouth. First proclaimed by the City of Charlottesville on September 18, 2018, the third Monday of September. The mission of the CYM Character and Day is to stress the importance of closing your mouth and listening, which is a key element of living a healthy, safe, and productive life. The CYM Day will kick off on Monday, September 16th, 2019 at 9 a.m. at Burley Middle School. Mr. Alexander will provide a CYM poster and activities to every Charlottesville Albemarle Public School, and posters will be made available for area businesses upon request. All students are encouraged to be still and quiet for 1 minute. Take a moment to think before you act. If angry, pause and count to 10. Be mindful when speaking. Choose words that are helpful, not hurtful. Have a safe ride, RIDE. Respect individual differences and expressions. During this day, allow people to share their thoughts and feelings without any interruption. Just CYM and listen. Feel free to visit alex-zan.com.
All right, I have an announcement, Mayor Walker, as well as a proclamation. Good evening, everyone. So, on Saturday, September 14th, from Saturday, September 14th to Friday, September 20th, Charlottesville will be celebrating the City of Charlottesville Minority Business Week 2019. So, for those who are not aware, it's become an annual tradition hosted by the Office of Economic Development, the Minority Business Council, as well as several community members. So everything will kick off on Saturday, again, September 14th at the Minority Business Kickoff at the Black Business Expo and pitch competition. That'll be from 12 to 6 p.m. at the Ix Park on the 14th. On Monday, the 16th, there'll be a Fall Minority Business Appreciation Breakfast. On Tuesday, the 17th, there will be the Chamber Business Diversity Council, the luncheon. That will be from 11:30 to 1:30 at the African American Heritage Center. On Wednesday, the 18th, there will be a forward of excellence in business celebration from 5:30 to 7 at the Old Metropolitan. Thursday, September 19th, the Charlottesville Minority and Women Business Expo will be from 10 to 2 at Carver Rec. And on Friday the 20th, there will be a Go Connect, a celebration of business diversity. For anyone who needs more information, feel free to contact Ms. Holly Lee. You can find her at 434-970-3514 or look us up online, www.cvilleminoritybusinessprogram.org. I have a proclamation as well. Mayor Walker and my colleagues on council, very proud. If we can, let's read this announcement to them. If we can have Mr. Alexander come up front, please. Let's give him a round of applause. And we're going to show Mr. Zan, and not only Mr. Zan, but all of those who sacrificed for the Charlottesville 12 today, upcoming on September 8th, 2019, is officially the Charlottesville 12 Day, honoring the 60th anniversary of school desegregation in the Charlottesville City Schools. So we have a proclamation for Mr. Zan and all those who were involved. Whereas 65 years ago, on May 17, 1954, the United States Supreme Court ruled against segregated schools in the United States with the landmark Brown v. Board of Education decision. And whereas the Commonwealth of Virginia implemented a strategy of massive resistance to public school integration between 1954 and 1959. And whereas in 1955, the parents of African American students in Charlottesville petitioned the school system to allow their children to attend their neighborhood schools and were denied. And whereas on August 6, 1956, the U.S. District Court Judge John Paul ruled in Allen v. School Board of the City of Charlottesville that the school system must integrate Lane High School and Venable Elementary School. And whereas on September 19, 1958, in an effort to prevent the desegregation of the Charlottesville school system, the governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia ordered the closing of Lane and Venable. And whereas Lane and Venable were shut down for the period of 5 months and the Charlottesville school system remained segregated for the remainder of that year. And whereas on September 5th, 1959, Judge Paul ordered the immediate transfer of 12 African American students, 3 to Lane High School and 9 to Venable Elementary. And whereas 60 years ago, on September 8th, 1959, 12 African American students bravely integrated the Charlottesville City School System. And whereas the struggle for equality and equity in the Charlottesville public school system and our city forever affected those involved, now therefore our illustrious Mayor, Nakiah Walker, and the members of City Council of the City of Charlottesville praise the fearlessness displayed by the families of the 12 students and those in our community who supported the desegregation of our school system and believe that that as we continue to address this city's historical indifference to African Americans, we remember this story on this day and do hereby proclaim September 8th, 2019 as Charlottesville 12 Day. Let's give them all a round of applause, please. Ms. Green is going to join them as well. I think that deserves a standing round of applause if we can do better than that, please.
Would like to say good evening.
Good evening.
Mayor Walker, Dr. Richardson, council members and guests. I would like to thank you, and thank you, Dr. West. I'd like to thank you for the proclamation, Charlottesville Human Rights Commission, for this proclamation. It doesn't seem like 60 years, and folks still approach me and say, Mr. Alexander, there's no way you could be 67 years old. I told him I did a whole lot of sim. Close your mouth and listen. I was hoping a fellow 12 student was going to join us, Marvin Townsend. He informed me at 5 o'clock that he's having some health issues. But his sister is here, and his sister's mother, well, their mother, played an integral part. Rosina Townsend? Rosina Townsend, she's the sister of Marvin and William Townsend, 2 of the students. At this time, I would just like to name the students. Of course, I'm Charles Alexander, Raymond Dixon, Regina Dixon. These are members of the Charlottesville 12. Maurice Henry, Marvin Townsend, William Townsend, Sandra Wicks, Roland Woodfolk, Ronald Woodfolk, and the 3 that attended, those 9 attended Venable. The 3 that attended Lane was Donald Martin, John Martin, and French Jackson. In addition to that, we always acknowledge Olivia Ferguson McQueen. And one of my mentors said, Alexander, go slow. You're not doing a motivational session. So she told me, go slow. Olivia Ferguson McQueen was one of the Negro student plaintiffs to challenge the integration of Charlottesville schools. She was one of the 3 appointed to Lane High School, but had completed her high school requirements in May of 1959. And the person that took her place was French Jackson. There also will be a commemoration reception, and you are invited on September 28th, 11 a.m. at Buford Middle School. And I just want to share this with you. The real heroes is not the Charlottesville 12 students. They are the parents. And I constantly have to remind people that I'm not a hero. I was 7 years old. Well, actually, I was 6 years old when it started out. And when you are 6 years old and the child of a black parent, you don't have a say. Contrary to what goes on today. If mama tells you what school you are going to, that's the school you are going to. I asked a question one time, how come my brother, who attended Jefferson, which was an all-black school, how come he didn't go to Venable? And my mom told me that he didn't want to go. And I said, well, what about me? She said, you didn't have a choice. Okay, Mom. So as I said, the real heroes are the courageous parents. And I want to mention my mother. She is the lone parent survivor today of the Charlottesville 12 parents. And her name is Elizabeth Alexander Taylor, and she is the real Liz Taylor. And I told her I would mention her name. I would also like to thank Ann Carter. Ann Carter has been instrumental. She's the creator of our legacy, and she has kept the Charlottesville 12 name and legacy alive. So this is the reason the Ann Carters and many of you are the reason, and Charlene Green, Dialogue on Race, they're the reason that the Charlottesville 12 today is alive, well, and kicking. Two of our students have transitioned. Regina Dixon and Raymond Dixon are no longer with us. And before I introduce Chantel Bingham, she's part of the Food Justice Network, they're planning to create a sundial as a tribute to the Charlottesville 12. But just before I do that, I want to pass, and I want to thank Ms. Hill for you mentioning SIM. It was about a year ago. That the city proclaimed SIM Day. And it's amazing, it's very appropriate. SIM, close your mouth and listen. Even if you think you know what it's all about, learn from others and close your mouth. So on the 16th of September, we will be celebrating SIM Day. And at this time, I would like to introduce Chantel Bingham. She will tell you a little bit about the sundial and a tribute. Did I give everybody a poster?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Dr. Richardson doesn't have one.
Who?
I'll get one later.
You'll get one? Where she get one?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Chantel, thank you.
Um,
Thank you all once again.
So I'm standing here with two youth food justice interns, and we worked over this past summer to discuss this a project that we're calling Healing in the Garden. And through those conversations with a lot of the youth that are in Charlottesville City Schools as well as Albemarle City Schools, they were reflecting on last year's threats and on the city schools and how can we start to create a space where school is always welcoming. We're always thinking about and reflecting about our past. And the idea that came up, especially in conversations on the threats to Charlottesville City Schools that happened last year, was that we're not doing enough to really reflect on the history. And so that led us to an exploration meeting with Charles Alexander, who came. The students really reflected on those first 12. Since they are engaged in City Schoolyard Garden programming, one of the things that we do is really, we're not only growing food, but we're also building community. And so that space really ignited them to think about how the garden is used, and they came up with a sundial. So understanding that a clock has 12 hours, that's representative of the 12 Charlottesville students at Integrated City Schools. They'll be creating those sundials as a tribute to Charlottesville 12. And so I have two of those students here with me today. It was really last minute. We didn't know the proclamation was going to happen until a couple hours. So we were able to scramble and bring two of the 7 out. There were also 3 community members that worked together, so it was a group of 10. I'm just going to really quickly read their names. Rodrigo Nunez, Emmanuel Quezada Romero, Michaela Howard, Grace King, Datavius Bryant, Alyssa Williams, and Amaya Lembachar are those 7 students. And then Rosa Key, Rebecca Jacobs, and Callista Barber are those other staff from CSG, some community residents that helped to create that. So they're just looking forward to be able to commemorate the Charlottesville 12 Day, and September 28th we'll be doing some stuff with the sundial, so we wanted to let you guys know.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Bingham.
Any other announcements?
Yes, Mayor Walker, I have a proclamation. And it's interesting, this is also September 8th. It's an important day.
Oh, okay.
So this is a proclamation of continued friendship, respect, and solidarity, 75th anniversary of the liberation of Besançon, France. Whereas September 8, 2019 marks the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Besançon, France, by the Combined Force Française de l'Intérieur and the United States Army 3rd Infantry Division. I'm better with French than English. Whereas the French and American residents of Besançon and Charlottesville have continued to combine forces to enthusiastically cultivate solid, durable, and enjoyable ties over the years. And whereas these ties have been cemented by a proclamation of friendship signed on September 8, 2004, followed by the establishment of a formal sister city relationship in October 2006, and whereas our lives have been significantly enhanced by the cultural, educational, and economic exchanges between residents of Besançon and Charlottesville, now therefore be it resolved that Nakia Walker, Mayor of the City of Charlottesville, Virginia, and the Charlottesville City Council send warm greetings to our sister city citizens on the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Besançon, and be it further resolved that as we celebrate and expand our common pursuits of friendship and respect for diversity and inclusion, we pledge to continue to wholeheartedly nurture and innovate even more exchanges between citizens of Besançon and Charlottesville. Signed and sealed this 3rd day of September 2019 by Mayor Nakia Walker. Is there anybody here from the sister cities? Because I know that Emily Martin is the representative for Besançon. And then is there anybody here from the Veterans of Foreign Wars? That just wanted to double check. So I guess, Mayor Walker, this will be just for you, and I guess
We'll make sure
we'll
it
just
gets
make sure.
mailed.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Are there any other announcements? No? All right. Is there anyone here who would like to speak on an item on the consent agenda? Okay.
I'm John Hall, Fry Spring. Just like to say on 1B, the Fire Fund, if it pleases the City Council, please consider CIP funds for Hall Group companies to apply at KTEC, workforce development, firefighting creation of Nomex flame retardant drywall, shingles, city siding or siding, for rent subsidy, affordable housing, and hotels, and public at large use with basic and intermediate level carpentry classes at PVCC, students, fall, and contractors. 2, life pipe creation to survive terrorist germ warfare attacks for the general public at large in crowded venues or surviving smoke inhalation in homes or hotel fires. 1E, VDOT revenue sharing localities, improved transportation. I am representing Hilda Matos and would like to suggest to her that she buy her own leaf bags. And I really appreciate what Marty Silman has done and really back him 100%. And we shouldn't have leaf bags given to the city. We'll save $1,300,000 in the long run. by Marty's foresight. 1F, West Main JPA Fork. I wish for City Council and Tony Edwards to transfer University Avenue and 14th Street ownership from the city to UVA with street easements for the city. That way, UVA will fund my street lowering concepts along with other big players for sources of funding. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Mayor Walker, looking at the list from this morning that came through, I think there are some people that wanted to speak about the leaf bagging. So I guess instead of speaking later, it would be probably most appropriate for them to speak now,
Yes.
as it is currently on our consent. So do you have, I don't remember the names of those three folks, but there was definitely, I think, 3 different people on the original list.
So we have Janine Chase. Come on up.
And these are folks that are talking about the leaves, because this is on the consent agenda.
Good evening. My name is Jean Chase. I'm a resident of Old Lynchburg Road, and I'm here to talk about the importance of safety and drainage along our street. And this goes along with having the option of having bagged leaves versus putting piled leaves up into the roadway along the curb line. This should be a personal choice of the homeowner as to what is best for a certain street and the safety issues leaves can pose. On Old Lynchburg Road from JPA to Middleton, we have a 2-lane high-volume road with too many people choosing speed and inattentive driving while using the shared roadway. We have asked for the choice of having the bagged leaves option to keep safety as a priority for pedestrians, for bicyclists, for vehicular travel, and for folks who have gardens who pick up bagged leaves as well to take with them for gardening from time to time. The system works well to have the bagged leaves picked up during the designated times. Our street does not need to have everyone rake their leaves roadside with rain and wind as 2 variables to scatter the leaves and to have slick leaves on the street, on the sidewalk, and blown back onto the properties of over 40 families to just have the work to repeat. We do not need to go back to the earlier problems of the 70s and 80s along OLR, which piled leaves created yards flooding and clogged drains. Due to weather challenges and 2 leaf trucks with the ability to suck up the leaves in piles, leaves which have been raked in piles along a street which can handle such, the process may even experience delays. On behalf of the 40-plus families along this residential street of 5 blind curves of a high-volume road and the need to keep storm drains open, we would ask for this option of bagged leaves not to be taken away. We would like the bagged leaves to remain a supported option by the City of Charlottesville, as we also have 3 school buses which pick up and deliver youngsters every day representing all ages and grade levels. Hilda R. Matos, 205 OLR, would like folks to know that she can discuss the earlier problems noted as one homeowner who strongly supports having the option of bagged leaves along with the rest of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Margaret Bloom.
All right, good evening. My name is Margaret Murray Bloom. Thanks for the opportunity to address the council. I'm here tonight as a representative of Panorama Pay Dirt, a family-owned business located in the county of Albemarle where I reside. For those of you who are unfamiliar with our company, Panorama Pay Dirt is a landscape supply and organics recycling company that turns locally sourced debris like leaves, branches, and wood chips into high-quality horticultural materials like compost. For more than 20 years, Panorama Pay Dirt has been the proud recipient of all of the leaves collected by the city at our on-farm composting facility. Since partnering with the city, we have produced tens of thousands of yards of premium compost that is getting returned to Central Virginia soils to help improve soil health and grow more productive plants. Composting is an incredible process that keeps organics out of the landfill, reduces and reverses the effects of climate change by sequestering carbon and grows great tomatoes. As Virginians, I know that you can appreciate that. In fact, tomorrow morning we are delivering compost in partnership with the city schoolyard garden to Clark Elementary, Burnley Moran, and I believe Jackson Via. As you all continue the discussion on changes to the leaf collection program, our company would like the city to know our stance. Considering that we have managed to deal with the plastic bag leaves for over 20 years, we are ultimately neutral on the proposal. That said, we must admit that the plastic bags brought to our farm can create challenges, and we would be more than happy to consider other options. However, alternatives like compostable bags have their own issues. A recent study done by the industry's leading publication, Biocycle, did a field test on the available compostable bags on the market, and unfortunately, the jury is still out as to whether composting facilities are finding success with these materials. Panorama Pay Dirt is completely committed to continuing the conversation and maintaining our positive partnership. We are happy to entertain any and all proposals that would make sense for city residents, whether that is continued exploration of compostable or paper bags, a centralized drop site for residents who may want to continue bagging their leaves, or increased education about the positive impact of loose leaf collection as it is currently proposed. We have seen an increase in our product quality since the city did start to switch over to vacuum trucks. Alternatively, should the city decide to maintain their bag leaf collection program, we would like you to know that we will continue to support their collection efforts just as we have done for 20 years. We consider ourselves to be a community partner and a community resource and look forward to continuing to improve Virginia soils through our compost production made possible by city and county residents alike. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Hilda Matos.
My name is Hilda Matos. I live in 205 Old Lynchburg Road. I have my daughter here that she's going to distribute folders with pictures because pictures speaks louder than words. And I will beg you not to stop the giving bags to collect the leaves because I've been affected by all the drainage. If we put the leaves on the side road of the road, it will get blown back into my yard. And about a month ago or so, we had a real severe hail and thunderstorm and heavy rain, and it got all washed into because the drainage was clogged up, and it got washed in my driveway, and I had to spend several hours collecting and cleaning on my driveway. So I beg you, please don't stop the leaves, the bagging of the leaves. Thank you very much.
Larry Jones.
Good evening. My name is Larry Jones, and I live on 301 Middleton Lane. I've given some thought also about these leaves, and I know the plastic bags is just a matter of time before they are going to be gone. I thought about it, and I looked over to see the trash can that we put our trash in. We could get some kind of containers, something similar to that, where you could have a truck that empties the trash with the forks on it. But you could also take and have the vacuum leaf sucker. Once those plastic things or whatever you want to fill them up with, one man can actually go over and suck them out of there with that machine right there, and you don't need 4 people. I'll sit and watch them. There's no way that you can take that vacuum and start vacuuming leaves. I've watched them go from Middleton Lane to Friar Springs swimming pool. It takes them over 45 minutes. One man running that thing, 2 men going, traffic outside, 1 driving. What I was thinking about, if we had something like that, like a trash truck to either come by and could pick them up, empty them in the big trash truck, put them down and gone. He can do 3 blocks while that sucking machine is trying to get one done. I think that if you give it some thought, money-wise also, and come up with some kind of idea to put these leaves in. Plastic bags, I know it's just a matter of time. They've already got rid of the straws at a lot of places, and the plastic bags are going next. So we need to look into this, and it may be the cheaper way to go. I don't know. Might be a good idea. Thank you all for listening to me.
Thank you. All right, is there anyone else here that would like to speak on an item that's on the consent agenda? All right, Ms. Thomas, would you read the?
Consent Agenda 1A, minutes, July 1, regular meeting, July 31, council retreat, July 31, special meeting, August 5th, special and regular meetings. B, appropriation, fiscal year 2020, fire programs aid to locality funding, fire fund, $158,343, first of 2 readings. C, appropriation, safe routes to school, non-infrastructure grant award, $93,125, first of 2 readings. D, appropriation, Charlottesville-Albemarle Adult Drug Treatment Court Grant Award, $240,000, second of 2 readings. E, appropriation, fiscal year 2019 to 2020, VDOT Revenue Sharing Program Multimodal Improvements and Local Match Transfer, $826,436, second of 2 readings. F, appropriation, VDOT Revenue Sharing Program for West Main Streetscape Improvements, Phase 1, additional award, $163,478, second of 2 readings. G, appropriation, Bama Works Fund Fire Safety Trailer Grant, $3,500, second of 2 readings. H, appropriation, State Revenue Sharing and Smart Scale Funds for West Main Streetscape Improvements, Phase 2, $4,009,265, second of 2 readings. I, resolution, establishing new line of succession, city manager, first of 1 reading. J, ordinance, amend Charlottesville-Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau Operating Agreement, first of 2 readings. K, ordinance, amending Charlottesville City Code, Section 26-29 for leaf collection, second of 2 readings. L, ordinance, petition to close an alley off Charlton Avenue next to 931 Charlton Avenue, second of 2 readings.
Are there any other comments?
Mayor Walker, I understood that some staff wanted to address some of the concerns that have been raised from the leaf collection. Is that right, Dr. Richardson? So the question is, do we do that now?
We would do it now.
Thank you. Yeah, I got Marty here as well as Paul from Public Works that can give that information to the community.
Good evening, Council. Thank you for this time. I'm happy to answer any questions y'all may have, and I can also provide some responses to some of the comments this evening about the leaf collection program. I think that there's some very valid points that are made. I think as far as the drainage issue, we're definitely well aware that there's areas in town that do have a tendency to get clogged by leaves. I think one thing that's going to help with that is by decreasing or eliminating the bag leaf pickup, we'll be able to increase our frequency by which we do loose leaf pickup. And so I think there's going to be less opportunity for loose leaves to get washed down in the drains and such not.
Are you all set in priority areas for those areas that you all know?
We know, we have a really good idea of the parts of the town that get heavy leaf fall, like Johnson Village, for example, gets a lot of leaf fall, and so we'll definitely, pay attention to those areas that are, more heavily leafed, if you would. I think another thing that'll help with that is educating the community, via website, utility mailings, social media, whatever it may be, to kind of inform folks of where to place their leaves, and so that we're not putting them in the street necessarily, but like behind the sidewalk or behind the curb where they're less likely to get washed down by the water that's in the street.
Can I ask, what about areas where there is no sidewalk and where the roadway is kind of narrow? So if there's no sidewalk and there's no bike lane or parking lane, which is like where I live, but there's definitely some areas like that. What is one, like, what do you do?
I think, as long as they're kind of behind the street edge, I think, one thing to consider is, with the bag leaf program, you put your bag somewhere, and usually that's a good location to place your loose leaf piles also. And I know
the bags you can put on top of it. I mean, I think one of the, I'm curious about, can we have a hotline? Is there a way for those, I mean, there's going to be some small areas of the city where there really will be a pileup, and there could be problems like what we've heard here. And for those, maybe a hotline that we would establish for people to be able to request special help or special frequency, because there will be areas where, you know, I mean, I know of areas where what you do is you put the bags on top of one another, and you'll have, it's like this high of bags, because there wouldn't be anywhere to put them. Otherwise, I know that's a very small area of the city, but for those areas, they're just going to spread.
We can certainly look into that. I know there are some, you know, software applications that we can look into. We've kind of started to look into a little bit better, some Esri-based applications that give the community the ability to sort of provide feedback and
Well, we've
request
got
pickups.
one of
The
those. We have
MyCville.
MyCville.
MyCville is something we could look into. There's other Esri-based products that we could also look into that have really short implementation periods that we could certainly look into. So I think that's a very good possibility that we could do
Dr.
something like that.
Richardson, would there be a way of maybe integrating, I mean, look, we already have MyCivil, but if there's a way of, I mean, because this is going to be soon, right? This is
This season.
Yeah, we're working on putting a plan in place in terms of trying to address those concerns. We've been listening to a lot of people throughout the community as we go to different places to try to talk about this, to be able to identify as well as be able to go and collect leaves in those various locations. So as he mentioned, there are areas that we've already identified in terms that, I mean, we know that there's heavy leaf collection in those areas in terms of the number of bags that was being collected in the past. So they'll be working towards that. What we're trying to work on tonight is just getting the approval from the council and then start our public campaign in terms of what we're planning to do and how we're going to receive the information from the community if there is a heavy buildup or if there's issues dealing with leaves in storm drains and different things like that. But we also have our stormwater crews that will be working in collaboration with the Department of Public Works to try to make sure that this is very seamless in terms of this transition. As I want the council to know is we're going to try this year and see how it works out. If we're successful, we'll continue to do it. If not, we'll move in a different direction.
But the hotline, they could just call the regular number.
This is my question.
If they feel like there's an immediate need.
Yes, 970-3830.
Is there a number, and what is that? I agree, Madam Mayor, that would be there's a number that, so it's the Department of Public Works?
Yeah, it's Public Service, Division of Public Service.
Okay, I think it'd be great just to let.
3830.
Yeah, I think just having a human that you could talk to.
Yep. Yeah, and we can reprogram. I mean, there's different options when you call that number. We can actually add a specific push, 7 to make a request for loose leaf pickup or something like that.
Yeah.
If we need to.
I do have one question. What prompted staff to make this change? Was there some trigger or something?
I think it's a combination of things. Since I've been in my role at Public Works, I've listened to a lot of feedback both from the community and just kind of watching the process go last year. I think every year we're asked to reduce budget, for the. So as a result, you got to figure out how to accommodate that budget reduction request, essentially. And so I think it's just a culmination of environmental impacts. I think as we try to become more of a green city, we need to look at every opportunity to reduce our contribution to the landfill, if you would. I think there's the monetary piece of it, which is, I think, speaks to itself. And then I think from a programmatic standpoint, I think one of the things that I'm very interested in is, using our resources internally a little bit more wisely. I think, the process of doing the bag program, there's a lot of staff effort that goes into, distributing bags, rolling the bags, distributing the flyers, things like that. And if we can sort of become more efficient with our internal operations, then it allows us to do more work in the right of way, like, asphalt, some concrete maintenance, things like that.
Thank you.
I guess for me, like, one of the biggest things is just how are we communicating this? And I expressed this when we met. I just think it's just so important because it's almost like you have to have the same effort one more time just to be able to get to every door to give the instructions so people know where to go to express, any concerns they're having, and they really understand this is a pretty big shift that we're taking. And the other thing is I'm also trying to understand, as some of the folks raised, is there an option where I realize that we don't want to create, if we're going to shift, we really need to make a hard shift, but is there a way for people, if they wanted to, if there are certain circumstances they actually want to get their own bag leaves, we identify a place where they actually have to take them, that we're not going to have any part of the handling of bag leaves, but or at least giving you an option of somewhere that we can then process a smaller amount. I think it will turn away a lot of people from taking that because it's a lot more effort. I'm telling you, I'm someone who's bagged my leaves every year I've been in the city, and I like my bags, but at the same time, I also look at it every year and scratch my head. It's like, this is a lot of waste. And I think I also observe what kind of personnel it takes to make this happen. So I'm just trying to understand, is there anything we can do to accommodate some of those more unique circumstances where people are just, you know what, there's just no way I can get around this without us actually being the ones to facilitate that?
I think there are. I mean, you know, our contract with Panorama, for example, has the bag process in it, and by changing our internal process for doing bag pickup doesn't necessarily change the contract. And so it could be possible that we work out something with, you know, Panorama, or, you know, find a way to allow, you know, residents to take their bags somewhere to be dropped off. I think that's something we need to look into and try to figure out how that would work. I certainly think we can figure something out that I'm pretty confident we can do that. But I think as far as this change, I think, you know, the city performing the actual bag pickup is really, I think, what we're trying to get away
Yep.
from, you know, and really look at just going completely loose leaf. And then as far as the kind of getting this information out to the community, I mean, we'll use our website, of course, the social media avenues that we have. We can do some press releases, and typically every year we put a mailer in the utility billings, you know, so we reach a lot of folks with the utility mailings as well.
I just know that wherever you're throwing those bags, I mean, those are the people you really need to get to, whether it's, you know, through utility bill or, I mean, I think a door hanger is even more effective, but it can be timely as well. I think it's going to be a shock to some folks.
But I think if we can figure out those streets that are the narrow streets that they were talking about, the storm drainage issues, then from an environmental standpoint, then it is the direction that we should try to move. It's easier for me to bag the leaves in my backyard than to rake them all the way, you know, to the front also. But I just think from the environmental standpoint, the shift, and if we can get those concerns, alleviate those concerns in some way, then it is a healthier option.
Okay.
To figure that out, even for people who can still transport them on their own. I mean, they may find that with more frequent pickup, if they can call and say, you know, I rake my leaves, it's gonna snow or storm, that usually ends, you know, them up in the drain, and then if we can get out to them, that may resolve some of those concerns if they feel like their needs are getting met.
That's the key. We have to be more responsive than we've been in the past. We have to be more frequent about it.
Yes.
Because in the past, that loose leaf was just such a wide range, and you don't know when they're going to come. And I know if you've committed to a whole Saturday afternoon, you don't want to be having that erased. And
Yeah,
so,
and that's one of the things that we're looking to do, and is like creating sort of like a week ahead schedule, so that folks know, you know, when the loose leaf trucks are going to be in their yard. So at that point, they can look ahead and be like, okay, we're scheduled for loose leaf pickup next week. Let's get our leaves raked up, so that by that point, they're only out there for, you know, hopefully only a week at most. And then I think I'll also add that, you know, one of the things we're doing, you know, the LEAF program in itself is really part of the overall solid waste program. You know, in the next year or so, we're going to take a really hard look at our overall program, you know, trash, recycling, you know, composting, leaf pickup. And what a lot of localities have moved towards is the LEAF program is really part of the solid waste program as far as their weekly pickup, you know. And so a lot of localities offer leaf pickup year-round in bags, you know, but the community has to provide those bags. They have to be biodegradable, but they're part of the actual weekly pickup through trash, and it's a year-round service. And so these are things that we can look into, is really take a deeper dive into our solid waste program in itself. And I know there was a individual that spoke tonight about a container that kind of sits next to your trash receptacle or your trash containers. I mean, that's the kind of thing that we'll be able to look into in the next couple of years to really sort of find out what avenues we can take that, you know, will accommodate the people that have a hard time with the loose leaf pickup.
So with what's being proposed here, we still have the flexibility to make some of these accommodations that we've been discussing. I guess how would council kind of see that come to fruition? And I mean, I'm maybe not making sure that we're just covering the communication, and we're allowing some flexibility for those.
Well,
unique
I think
cases.
there's been some really good ideas brought up, and we just need to kind of dig into those, you know, with staff and figure out, you know, what we can and can't do.
But this ordinance is flexible enough where there's that we can, or would you rather us wait?
I think making the decision tonight is imperative, because without the decision tonight, we can't really move forward as to what the next steps are. And so I think we definitely need the decision tonight so we can kind of formulate the plan moving forward. And then I think, you know, we can certainly look into, you know, the request, the hotline, you know, other places for folks to drop their bags off themselves if they'd like to. So.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question. Would you come up for a second? In terms of bags being dropped off, I just have a question about that, because those bags that we give for leaf pickup are thinner than other trash bags. So if individuals start just dropping off any trash bag they pick up, will that present a problem?
Every single, with our contract with the county, we are required to recycle all of those bags, so we take them to a recycling facility to do that. It doesn't really matter on the debagging end for our side, because they have to be hand debagged one by one anyways. That's usually done with an X-Acto knife that slices it open and then you pull the bag away. So I would see there could be an issue if people use the heavy-duty contractor bags. That may cause a problem. But no, beyond that, I don't think there's an issue.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right. Are there any other?
Hey there, Jake Gold, city resident. This is not about the trash leaf bagging. It is.
Is it an item on the consent agenda?
It is,
Okay.
yes. So I think it's a little cavalier to be putting $4 million towards the West Main Street redevelopment without any discussion, especially because it seems like it's just going to be a big gentrification project. That's all I have.
So I have those two items circled to just pull, to vote on separately, but if you have a comment.
Mayor Walker, I do have a comment. Councilor Signer also and Councilor Bellamy have been through this. The West Main project began in 2013, December 2013. It had about almost a 2-year public engagement process. 300 to 400 people participated. It also then resulted in a change of zoning of that area so that the large buildings that you see in the flats and the standard won't happen again, because the height limits were established to go lower, so you couldn't raise height limits by a special use permit anymore. And in terms of the improvements to the street is going to be more sustainable because of the fact that there's going to be 400% more tree canopy. That's critically important if we're going to be serious about decarbonization. That means getting the carbon out of the air. The current trees are unhealthy, they're dying, they're infiltrating the sewer lines, and they're also infiltrating foundations. The new trees are going to be put in what they call silva-cell planters, which are a way to filter the stormwater runoff on the streets in a manner that's going to meet the Department of Environmental Quality requirements to meet our total maximum daily loads for the Chesapeake Bay area. That's important because the Chesapeake Bay is actually becoming healthy again. We're actually growing oysters again. We're getting food out of the bay again because of those kinds of technologies that we're using in West Main Street. So when you look at the other problem, that we've got underground gas lines that are nearing the end of their lives. If anybody's ever familiar with what happened in Andover, Massachusetts, where 300 houses were blown up because of failed gas lines, these are not things that you can put off. So when we are replacing the underground gas lines, we're going to also then be undergrounding the utilities. The utilities are going to go in what they call a duct bank. That's, unfortunately, the Dominion Energy will not pay for a duct bank. Dominion Energy, every year we put in our request with the General Assembly that the Dominion Energy would follow the dictates of a local government, and we wouldn't be liable for that cost. But 1/3 of the cost of the whole West Main Street improvement is because we're undergrounding utilities. The reason why that's important is because you declutter the sidewalks, you get rid of those telephone poles, you get rid of those transforming units, you suddenly have sidewalks that are wide enough for 2 people to walk side by side. You have sidewalks wide enough for baby strollers and for people that have visual impairments or physical impairments. So the final thing I'd like to say is that we're going to be adding more bus stops. We're going to be actually having bus stops that are better appointed than the ones we have now. More lighting, better lighting, and all of this is to facilitate public transportation, which is the most equitable kind of transportation you can have. So all total, this is doing sustainability, it's doing equity at the same time. So that was a public process that started in 2013. I remember because that was the day my mother passed away.
All right.
There's also
Madam Mayor, I
appropriation
guess-
here for revenue sharing.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I'll
And
just.
that's, go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry. Just to add two other points. I think over the long history of this, a lot of people have had different reasons they've supported this. With all due respect, I think that's a gross misrepresentation of what the project became over the journey of it. Through a lot of pushback on earlier versions of it, it very decidedly embraces the historic neighborhoods that surround it. It is designed to be the, quote, living room for Charlottesville, and it's meant to be very encompassing through, even through the historical markers that are going to be there, but it's supposed to invite the whole city, and this was on top of the decision to cut the zoning heights from the surrounding, so that the surrounding neighborhoods would not be overwhelmed by what happened there. That cut millions of dollars of potential gentrifiable real estate there intentionally so that it would be in concert with the surrounding neighborhoods. That's number one. And number two, for me, the reason that I really started avidly supporting it was because of the bike lanes, because it's the most dangerous bike corridor we have, and a lot of people have been hurt there. And when you start biking in the city regularly, it is the most dangerous central corridor. And if you look at cities trying to get up to speed, literally, it is absolutely crucial that West Main Street is safe to bike, and it's not safe right now. And that's really difficult on a narrow streetscape like what we have there, where it's just not a wide street. And the way to do it was with this really complicated, design where the parking spaces alternate, and the businesses didn't like it because we cut parking spaces, and it's had a long journey. And then the biggest thing now is that the university came in with money, substantial amount of money as a part of this whole journey, where now they're contributing to lighting and public safety, because for them, for kids at UVA to feel comfortable using the street a lot more for the multimodal reasons that Councilor Galvin is talking about. It's just there's a lot that's gone into this, but the major goals are to make it a very inviting, greener central corridor that kind of does the opposite of that very simplified description.
Okay.
I'll just be very brief. In terms of the community engagement piece, there, as my colleagues alluded to, there was a ton of conversation, but I know even for myself and the consultants, we had special community engagement meetings in different neighborhoods with community stakeholders, normally folks who don't get the opportunity to express themselves in these kind of forums from low-income communities. And I mean, we had 2 of those, so there was definitely engagement in that regards. I know everybody may not be happy with the project, but I think from Ms. Galvin's perspective, it's one of the most vital things that we have to do in the city. That we have to get that part of the corridor, and specifically the pipes underground, squared away, or it could be really, really bad for us moving forward. The infrastructure has to be right.
Yeah. So I've shared during this whole discussion about West Main Street, and just especially with how we're looking at the budget and what's actually there versus what we've been told is there. The dollar amount for this entire project at this time, with balancing that with some of the other city needs, has been a concern that I've expressed every time we've had this discussion, I think, except the last meeting. That's my concern. There are still some questions, and when we had our first meeting with the, that I was in, that you were in with me, Councilor Galvin, what they are planning in terms of, the attempt with the historic markers. I know that you were working with, that they were working with Miss Green, the Heritage Center, so the attempt there, I think that is still in process. And so, having a little bit more of that information, and again, seeing the trees come up out of the sidewalk and that will be fixed moving forward, all of those things can be very beneficial, but I'm looking at this in terms of the whole, the money that the city will contribute to match the funds coming in from the state, and that has been a concern of mine.
No, and as I've raised before, this is, I think, a very critical infrastructure project for the city, and these are significant funds coming from other sources, including the university, the state. And I've also observed this from many different roles over the past several years, and it's something that I'm certainly committed to us pressing forward with.
And then the statue also is another. I know that there's been an attempt to get that scheduled and worked out to have that discussion, but we don't have that in place
We
now.
have the work session.
Work sessions on the 24th.
We have a roundtable, right?
It's on calendar.
Did it?
Yeah, it did get on the calendar.
So we're gonna.
Dr. Richardson, I don't know if Mr. Akefina could tell us how much state money between federal revenue sharing and state money and smart scale money has been already allocated to this project from the other government sources.
Good evening, councilors. I'm not sure I have everything, but I know the $4 million you're getting ready to vote on tonight is a state funding. It's a state match, all of them.
And that's 100%. They give 4 million as well.
Yeah, and in terms of smart scale, I think we receive for phase 2, $2.09 million for phase 2. I don't think we've received any additional smart scale funding, but we received $2.09 million for phase 2.
And the university is another
$5
Yeah, university pledged $5 million, but we haven't seen that yet.
And we need to talk a little bit more about that moving forward, because that's phases 3 and 4, and then talking about the financial impact that will have on the city moving with phases 3 and 4. We will have to have that discussion.
Absolutely.
Because it's almost what the total project be about, what, 40 million?
Yeah, when we get the new scoping and revised estimate, that will be close to $40 million.
So that
For the
was
4
30
phases.
originally.
Yeah, it was 30 originally, and there were cost escalations and some other components were not added. So now that the project has been federalized and with other components, we are scoping the project, and that will include some additional expense.
Yeah. Okay.
But right now, I think we are pretty close to all the money we need for phases 1 and 2. And by the time we get to phases 3 and 4, a lot of you behind that desk are not going to be here, because it will take a while before we get to phases 3 and 4.
Well, if I might, I certainly wouldn't be averse to having the negotiations about having the $5 million be applied to the earlier phases.
Yeah, that's
Well,
something
I
we can.
still think-
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead.
You got it.
No, go.
You go.
No, I'm just saying with the $5 million, I mean, that's good to have that upfront allocation, but I don't know if the university will provide that to us upfront without going into phase 3 and 4. But anyway, even if we even attempt to go to 3 and 4, I want to make sure that $5 million is on the table
Absolutely.
before we even start the project.
Yeah, totally agree.
And I just want to clarify something for the city council. The $5 million, I think the letter reads, is going to be for any project around the grounds. In other words, it could apply to West Main. It may apply to Emmett project we have on Emmett, because it didn't specifically note West Main. It just says projects around the grounds. So that includes West Main and maybe any other project within the area that relates to safety improvement.
We definitely need to have that update.
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you, Alex.
All right, so I am requesting that H and F, if we can vote on that separately. And then I had one question about what is, Mr. Blair, our current policy with regards to the amendment, one of the amendments to the Albemarle, Charlottesville Albemarle Convention and Visitors Bureau operating agreement with the alcohol.
Yes.
Do we currently have that in place in the city? I know it was changing, agreeing to allow Albemarle, and I'm assuming that's because they're the fiscal agent?
Correct, that's because
Okay.
they're the fiscal agent, so we have to go by the county policy on alcohol.
Okay.
So that's why that's.
What is our current policy?
I don't believe we have a current policy
Okay.
on alcohol expenditure.
Okay, and so could you all just provide an example of what that change may allow them to do?
Well, Mayor Walker, I was just, my understanding was that they were wanting to follow their own county protocols, that that's why they were doing that in sync. I don't know any specific reasons why they would have an event with the alcohol on. That was what that was, is to have an event with alcohol
Right,
there.
the exact wording, I believe, is appreciation events or something like that. So I suppose if they had an event at a winery or something like that for the Visitors Bureau, if they wanted to hold an event at a winery or brewery, they would need that amendment in the policy if they paid for the event.
Okay. All right, so.
So you want a motion with pulling of F and H first?
Okay.
Is that what you're asking? Okay. So I move we adopt the consent agenda with F and H pulled for separate vote.
Second.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, please vote. I thought,
Here, we can't buy alcohol through the procurement process. This allows them to be able to do that through their procurement process.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
I had some questions about that. I didn't understand why that's being allowed, but I'm assuming.
Again, I think it's due to the idea of a brewery or winery. If the Bureau wanted to have an event there and wanted to purchase, alcohol at that event for appreciation or other.
No, I get that, but I just wanted to just highlight when we're talking about how money is spent.
Right.
That the city, do we contribute $1 million or so, right?
Sure.
And so, how that money is spent and who it's being spent on, if that is so I think that's a part of the bigger discussions that we need to have, that we have been having about branding, who's being targeted, and what city funding, especially in this case, is being spent on. Because I'm assuming they are under some different guidelines if they can do this, because it's a separate entity, even though it's money that both localities donate to.
Correct.
Yeah.
I had a conversation with the executive, and we'll get you some answers on that.
So now I will move for items F, the VDOT Revenue Sharing Program for West Main Streetscape Improvements Phase 1, and item H, State Revenue Sharing and Smart Scale Funds for West Main Streetscape Improvements Phase 2. I move we adopt those items.
Second.
All right, are there any further questions or comments? All right, please vote. All right, carries 4-1. All right, next we have the city manager's response to community matters from the August 19th. That's the meeting. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of council and the public. I only have one item for discussion tonight, and that's pertaining to the question that was raised about the downtown mall security. Within the next couple of months, we'll be coming back to the council to talk about that as far as the information received from our consultant pertaining to the downtown mall security. And we'll have that discussion with you, with the entire council.
Okay.
And that concludes all my announcements for this meeting.
And just for clarification, that's pertaining to the crosswalk side, all
Second
of
and
it, right?
fourth, and the
Everything.
whole entire
Okay.
downtown mall area.
Is it possible for us to, because it's been such a hot topic issue specifically on social media, is there any way that we can maybe put essentially what you just stated out on our Twitter feed or something, just so folks can know, hey, we're reviewing it, it will come back up, because I think there's a lot of misinformation in that regard.
Yeah, and I've had that discussion with the Downtown Business Association as well as many people in the community. We get calls all the time about it, but
Yeah.
we will put that out on our Twitter feed and Facebook and all our other social media outlets to be able to do that and provide that information to the public as a whole.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. So next we have public comments. And the first person is Avery Chenoweth.
Good evening, and thank you for the moment to speak to you all. My name's Avery Chenoweth. I live here in Charlottesville, and I've been following the city avidly for years and written books about the local history and about how we shape the land and the land shapes us. And recently, I've been in a number of conversations and emails with someone, to my vast interest, is interested in buying the statues. And he has the capacity to do so, and he has the interest to do so, and he shares with me a passion to upright, if you will, the story of Charlottesville and put a lot of the people back into the headlines who have been lost to history and tell that story. And we agree, he and I, that the best way to do this is to start by making some real estate available. And that starts with Lee, and it goes down the street to Mr. Jackson. And they can go live somewhere else for a while. And this is a serious offer, and he has expressed this interest for quite a while, and we just renewed this conversation just a few weeks ago and by email since then. And we would love to arrange a phone call with you all to discuss the opportunity. And as I understand, it's mired in the courts and maybe heading for the Supreme Court of Virginia. But in the meantime, I think it would be a galvanizing move if we could make something real start to roll forward and liberate the city, really, from these icons of its polite tyranny, if you will. So that's the end of my comment, but I'd love to be in touch with you all and see if we could arrange a phone call time. I know he's amenable and available for the next several weeks, and he's now retired and has flexibility that perhaps we can all work with.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'll just say my wife has told me I can't bring home any more lawsuits, so I better not say a word about any of this, period. So that's my comment.
Yeah, I
Mayor
appreciate
Walker, I'm
that.
wondering if it might be
Yeah, that's
helpful
why I
if
said
Mr.
Mr.
Blair
Blair.
said something to this.
Well, actually, there was a hearing today in this particular matter, but as things stand right now, the council couldn't have any action to remove that statue. Ultimately, as you stated, if this does go to the Virginia Supreme Court, which it very well could, that we would need an opinion from them before we would advise the council to engage in any negotiations to move the statues at this point.
Is there a possibility that we could get that permission somehow?
No, sir. Not until the court case
decision's
is
been made?
concluded. Yes, sir.
Okay. It's unfortunate, but, you know, we're not going anywhere, so we'll hang around and maybe we'll get them out of here. Thank you.
Nelson.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
I have something to bring up. I know this has been going on for quite some time. Every Friday night and every time something happens at the pavilion, 15 handicap parking spaces are removed from the disabled community, and none are provided elsewhere for the disabled community. It's frustrating that Charlottesville does not also provide proper enforcement for disabled parking. There's a little video on YouTube that proves that. 230,000 views doesn't look good for Charlottesville. So I asked that City Council impose a zero tolerance when it comes for handicap parking. I also asked that City Council impose the term officer discretion be removed. Because just this past week, a woman parked outside this very building in handicap parking. She told an officer, well, I don't have anywhere else to park. She did not have a handicap placard. She did not have a plate. She knowingly parked in handicap parking. I also ask that you guys impose full fines. It's not getting done. Also, the handicap parking located right outside this very building. There's a caddy that parks out there for 8 hours a day. The parking located between the two buildings is basically our parking for a reason. It allows citizens to do business between the two city buildings. Handicap parking should be 2 hours. Just like throughout the city, in the downtown area, it's 2-hour parking. Handicap parking should be 4 hours according to Virginia state law. Ask any police officer. They don't have a clue how long handicap parking is. It's a shame when a police officer doesn't even know. I've tried to get a hold of parking enforcement. I've made numerous phone calls. No one returns phone calls. I've stood in the police station. I've asked to speak to parking enforcement. No one comes. I've stood in this very building and I've asked to speak to the ADA person. Apparently, the ADA person quit. You guys have not fulfilled the position yet. So what is a citizen supposed to do with disabled parking when there's no one to help us? Thank you very much.
Thank you. John Hall.
I'm Johnny Hall of Fry Spring, president of Hall Group Companies LLC of Fry Spring, a medical and industrial art design doctor professional being allowed to submit capital improvement plan options before City Council for FY 2021 funding. For one, directing the resurrection of the old landmark hotel with solar panels for government rent subsidy affordable housing. I'd like to show the poster. I got the new Beacon Hall Hotel, the old landmark, with light streaming downward to light the areas below. It doesn't contribute to light pollution if you stream lights downward toward the street. I'd like a change machine in the QC City Transit and Visitors, Queenshawn City Transit and Visitor Center. The city annex, register to vote, social services there for vetting people that would help build back the new Beacon Hall Hotel under the auspices of the Habitat for Humanities. Once we get the funding, I really believe that we shouldn't be building any more affordable housing until we take care of the needs and services needs of the existing affordable housing buildings, such as the need for dehumidifiers where there's mold. This is a really good dehumidifier. It's American made. It's a GE, General Electric. It costs about $200 and should be liberally purchased for people with mold problems, and especially in the summertime. They're also broken down air conditioners. we should get maybe oscillating fans for such residents of affordable housing buildings. We should we also have fold-out stop signs on Cat and other buses that serve the city, and get the buses all the way out to the airport along established routes, and have canopy-covered stop signs throughout the city with dome lights, call boxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Tanisha Hudson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I couldn't talk last meeting, so I want to go back to last meeting about the proclamation about respect. December 5th, 2016, do you guys remember that meeting when Jason Kessler threatened West Bellamy and told him his days were numbered? You didn't do the proclamation then. Mike, do you remember when Raymond Mason was doing his work and you had his criminal record pulled? Do you also remember when, right before election, when you told Chris Torres to write that article about Nakaya's email and the way that she talked to council? And then after 8/12, when you tried to throw Chief Thomas under the bus. So I just want to take you two, because Bob ain't here and Kristen isn't here, but I want to take you two back pre-August the 12th and post-August the 12th, to how this man and his family was being completely disrespected, and you didn't even do a proclamation then. Chief Thomas was being disrespected. You didn't do a proclamation then. Nakaya was running for city council. He had a whole article written. You didn't even do a respect proclamation then. Like, you guys go be a little extra with this when people say something to hurt my feelings, when it's y'all. But when it's black people, you don't care. Like, you really don't care. Let me see. What else did I want to say? Yeah, pull up that meeting, December 5th, because I went and watched it. Y'all didn't even really make those people sit down. Like, Jason Kessler them was still able to come in here with their little signs, be loud. They were being very disrespectful and ruthless. But then when we do it to get the change that we need and the equity that we need for black people and the same treatment that you give everybody else, it becomes a problem. And see, I mean, yeah, you know, a little cuss word may come out here and there. That's just, you know, sometimes our nature by design. It doesn't have to be, but sometimes it is by design. But those words don't hurt y'all. I know y'all heard the saying, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt. At least that's what the teachers tried to teach us when we was in school, you know. But y'all gotta learn to let stuff roll off y'all back the same way you expected this man to let a death threat roll off of his back. Oh, and Mike, about those historical markers, you can barely see them. We should probably get those enlarged so that people can see them. So when you do get these wider bike lanes, that they're able to see what black people really did along Main Street and Star Hill. Also, about Main Street, let's get that pedestrian way straight. You can die coming from Mel's Cafe if you park across the street from the pawn shop. Let's do something about the pedestrian there, the same way we was fussing about 4th Street. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin Cox.
Good evening. I'm Kevin Cox. I live on Fairway Avenue. And I'm here tonight because I want to proclaim my gratitude and appreciation for the hard work that City Parks and Rec employees do keeping the downtown mall clean. The reason that I feel like I need to do this tonight is because of a story that was on local TV a few days ago about a group of well-intentioned volunteers who decided to come to the downtown mall and clean up the downtown mall. And I think this story has some unfortunate negative messages. One of those messages is that the downtown mall is so filthy that it's necessary for volunteers to come and clean it up. Just like with 4th Street being one of the safest crossings, one of the safest places for pedestrians in Charlottesville, the downtown mall is one of the cleanest places in Charlottesville. It doesn't need volunteers to come and clean it because the crew with Parks and Rec is very diligent, does a great job, and I just want to stick up for them. I think that if the volunteers really want to do something, there are plenty of other places in Charlottesville that could use cleaning up. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Emerald Young. Good evening.
Hello, my name's Emerald Young. I live in the county part of Charlottesville. And I came here today because I wanted to ask the council to consider disbanding the Civilian Review Board because I believe its genesis was that there was a higher rate of stops, arrest of African Americans rather than other races. And I want to say that disparities are normal. And also the fact that the reason I'm here is because I want to preserve living in a lawful society. And there are certain programs to create lawlessness in the U.S. One is demonize the police. Number 2 is have the media constantly harping on black victimization and white racism. The third is establish civilian review boards that hamper the effectiveness of law enforcement. Thirdly, the third component in creating lawlessness is criminal justice reform, which allows dangerous criminals to be out in the community without being charged, undercharged, no bail, low bail. Another component is elected officials who minimize, cover up, misplaced blame for black criminality. And another component are Soros-funded district attorneys, chiefs of police, who also feel their mission is to reduce the population of incarcerated black people when the effectiveness of law enforcement depends on the police being able to do their job and not being undermined by city officials and politicians who have an agenda to release criminals when it's not warranted, and it creates a lack of safety. And the fact is, black people commit more crimes than other races.
Thank you.
No, this is a fact.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. So, the Yellowstone Drive address, the Albemarle County Board of Supervisors would be the primary government for you to, I understand. Okay. All right, Harold Foley.
actually include the white people who created a bit more.
So, I love Charlottesville. Hey, so I'm here to thank City Council for supporting the Civilian Review Board and to let you know that the community is kind of concerned about what direction that City Council is going in. I think they're waiting for like the work session to happen to see what the community need to do to organize around. So I guess I'm kind of a little shaken up about what is happening. The issue is to know what's going on so we can help y'all organize around making sure that it happens, right? Because we really need the Civilian Review Board for certain issues other than black folks are the main one to commit crime. So thank you, and I hope everything is working good about the CRB, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Thank you.
So we currently have that work session scheduled for the 19th.
Oh, and
Yes, ma'am.
DMC?
Yes.
It's right before, it's not the same time though, because we're going to both.
It's 4 and then it's at 6. Yeah. All right. So is there anyone else who would like to speak?
Good evening, Council, City Manager, Attorney Blair. Don Gather, City Resident. I apologize. I just have come to realize why we have to have surgeons available at these meetings so that they can do prefrontal lobotomies when necessary. It is. I want to thank the police chief. I'm going to do something different tonight. I want to thank the police chief for taking the opportunity and the time to go over to the community of 7th and Dice Street and offer her apologies and her explanation, and the fact that the city was not at all involved or even made aware of the incident and the operation that the state police put on. I also want to point out to council that words are not necessarily profane. Actions, and in many occurrences, inactions are what could be labeled as profane. So we just need to take that into consideration, please, and understand that Black Lives Matter. Thank you.
And just a quick comment, you can do it. I'm trying to figure out how to, 2 speakers ago to what to say. But I think that's the education that we need to do in the community. That's what the ask is. The arrest that was made a few years back on Rugby Road with the fake ID theft, there was guns, there was money, laundering possibilities. That house didn't look like the house on 7th Street looked.
Right.
So this isn't about not when Black people are talking about what does fair and equitable and just systems look like. It is that if you are in a predominantly white community going into a house occupied by white individuals, that the outcome is the same.
Right.
And those outcomes are not the same. And that is what fair and just and equitable systems that we don't have, what they look like. Now, I don't have the information about what was being looked for or, doing that raid, but those are the, type of changes that, we're asking for with reform that, that people are treated the same. When I worked at Region 10 in the treatment center, everyone in this room will know, because it had to have affected you, that drug and alcohol addiction across lines, the suffering from it is not a black or white thing. And there was frequently more white individuals in the treatment program, but that is not the story that we see.
Right.
Even in Charlottesville, that's not what's reported on. And so to have those type of comments in a city that is saying that it is, changing narrative and changing course, and that it's the story that, well, while one person said it today, the story that so many people share, it's heartbreaking.
Well, they're hurtful, and they don't do anything to further the hope of the city. They just continue to drive a further wedge. So we all sit with eager anticipation, waiting to see the report on the 19th, and what those numbers will bear up. Thank you.
All right. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right. Closing public or community matters, and we'll. Oh, did you have a comment? Okay. So we'll be back at 8:15. All right, I call this meeting back to order. Next, we have the public hearing ordinance on the release of a portion of the gas line easement, the shops at Stonefield, first of 2 readings. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilors. In January of 2015, the city acquired a natural gas line easement across property located in the shops at Stonefield Shopping Center. A proposed building in the Stonefield Shopping Center will encroach into the easement, and the property owner and the Department of Utilities have agreed to relocate a portion of the easement. The property owner has already granted a new easement for the relocated portion of the gas easement. The Department of Utilities has no objection to the release of this small portion of the easement in order to accommodate the proposed building. A public hearing is required by law to give the public an opportunity to comment on the proposed conveyance of a property interest. Notice of such public hearing was advertised in the local newspaper at least 7 days in advance of this public hearing. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the ordinance releasing a portion of the existing gas easement in the shops at Stonefield Shopping Center. I'm available for any questions if you
And I
have.
have a question about the relocation. Is the property owner in charge of will be responsible for the?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, they're taking
The
full.
fees,
Yes,
okay.
absolutely.
All right.
Paying for that.
All right. Any other question? All right. I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the topic? No? All right.
I don't think we've really gone over it yet. It's ordinance number 4. We've not gone over that.
No, we're talking about number 2.
Right, so I'll just wait for
Okay.
4.
All right, I'll close public discussion. Any discussion? Okay. All right. And
Move this to the consent agenda.
Place this on the consent
Yes.
agenda?
all right. Thank you. Oh, you're still here. Next. Okay. Next, we have the public hearing ordinance, Valley Road, Monroe Avenue, Jefferson Park Avenue easement.
In 2007, at the request of the University of Virginia, City Council approved a proposal to close and vacate a portion of Valley Road to mitigate cut-through traffic from the South Lawn project and to accommodate requests from the adjacent neighborhood. It was conditional upon a utility and pedestrian access easement be granted to the city by the University of Virginia. In 2014, UVA granted the city the utility and pedestrian access easements in the portion of Valley Road. In 2016, UVA developed a master plan to redevelop several properties adjacent to Brandon Avenue to be constructed as a model green student community that will include academic spaces, student wellness facilities, student housing, and a central green street. The redevelopment project envisions multifunctional programs, enhanced pedestrian connections, and a mix of uses for the student community. UVA is nearing completion of the student housing building and has started construction on the wellness facilities. UVA has requested the city vacate the utility easement and the pedestrian access easement in a portion of Valley Road. This request is to accommodate the construction of the Brandon Avenue project and the proposed buildings. In addition, UVA has submitted to the city a utility easement and pedestrian access easement in the same area that will accommodate the proposed buildings. The city have reviewed the easements and they will meet the city's needs. The city's approval should be conditioned upon UVA granting the city the new utility and pedestrian access easements. In addition, UVA has requested the city approve easements to allow connection of a new UVA water line to an existing UVA water line in Jefferson Park Avenue. UVA has also requested the city approve easements for a fiber optic line in Jefferson Park Avenue and Monroe Lane. These connections for the water line and the fiber optic line are to accommodate the Brandon Avenue project. The Departments of Utilities, Public Works, and Neighborhood Development Services have reviewed the request for easements and find them acceptable. A public hearing is required by law to give the public an opportunity to comment on the proposed conveyance of a public interest. Notice that the public hearing was advertised in the paper at least 7 days in advance of the public hearing. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the vacation of the utility and pedestrian easement access easements conditional upon UVA granting the city utility and pedestrian access easements in a nodal location in Valley Road. In addition, staff also recommends approval of the easements for the UVA water line in Jefferson Park Avenue and the fiber optic line in Jefferson Park Avenue and Monroe Lane. I'm available if you have any questions.
So I have a question about why didn't we get this when we voted on the Brandon Avenue project?
At that time, they hadn't finalized the locations, just concerning the pedestrian and utility easements. They hadn't finalized the footprints of the buildings and exactly where they would go associated with that phase of the project. Regarding the fiber optic line and the water line, they also needed to also finalize those locations and exactly where those connections would be.
Does these access limit the neighborhood surrounding it? At any, are they access points that they currently use? Will they be shutting any of those off?
No, they're giving us, so the footprint, the one concerning Valley Road, the footprint of the building actually encroaches into the easement that they already gave, and it's actually just shifting a little bit up, and there'll be sidewalks to accommodate, the sidewalks will be put back, and that pedestrian easement will be, it'll be accessible to people that need access.
And then there was something in here about the 40-year time frame. What happens after that point?
So,
Per the Constitution of Virginia, Madam Mayor, we cannot grant the easement for a term longer than 40 years as a city.
And then, and I'm sorry I didn't mark this, but there was if the city needed to make repairs or do anything like that to the line, it would fall on, the city would be responsible for those.
the city's responsible for our lines.
For our line.
Just
Yes,
ours,
our
okay.
lines.
But
Right,
not
but
with
not
their.
UVA.
Okay,
That's
okay, that just wasn't clear. Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions? So I'll open this up to a public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the project? This is number 3.
I just have one comment about that. I went down there among contractors while they were working on Brandon Avenue, that area. There's a mishmash of fiber optics. A whole lot of different entities at UVA want their own fiber optics separate and all. It's just really poorly coordinated and designed. However, a lot of work has been done, a lot of money has been spent. This shows you when UVA owns the roads, they do as they please with them and spend as much money as they want to have it the way they want to do it. And that's why I would like to comment on the next one.
Okay. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? All right, closing public hearing. Any further discussion? I do plan to be consistent with my vote on this project, so I'll just state that.
Do you prefer that this be placed on the consent agenda and just have it
I'll pull it,
removed?
yeah.
Okay.
All right. All right. Thank you. Number 4, amendment to the text of the city zoning ordinance, city code section 34-896 to modify access requirement to for various uses. First of 2 readings.
Good evening. At the May 2019 Planning Commission meeting, Mr. Trey Stegman requested that the Planning Commission consider initiation of a zoning text amendment to change access requirements in the zoning ordinance. He specifically noted that the section that denotes that at least 2 vehicular points are required if a development contains 50 units or more. The commission discussed this item at a June work session and then initiated the text amendment for review in July. Staff then worked to develop text to provide that to the commission for joint hearing, and that joint hearing occurred in August. As staff looked at this, we looked at it like we do any other zoning text amendment. We look at it in the context of the city as a whole and how it will affect all aspects. We don't look at a specific development, though we do look at different circumstances that may occur throughout the city. So I just wanted to make sure that you all understood that we provided the review of that in the context and the larger context as opposed to a specific application that we do not have at the moment. At the public hearing, we had a number of people who commented on the language. A couple of individuals were in favor of the language. There was one individual who was concerned that this would open the floodgate for potential for other considerations and make it so that only one point of access for large developments would be required. So that was a concern that came up, as well as another speaker talked about concern for increased density within the community. So that was a more general comment. One modification made to the language during the hearing was to remove the language that specifically said pedestrian and place multimodal in the language so that it was encompassing of all the different transportation modes, as well as the Planning Commission requested that we have the fire marshal review the specific language, which we have done, and he has no problem with the language as proposed. One of the clarity points that we do want to make is that any change to this code section does not change any safety or anything related to that. There are still fire code requirements for access requirements for residential and commercial units. So the fire code dictates a certain way, and that's going to be the way that that is. And then the traffic engineer has the ability to weigh in on a proposal that comes forward based on sound engineering practices. So this section review was, it was actually a good opportunity for us to look at a very small section of the code, get the code into a pretty good shape, and it's something that we can continue forward with and incorporate into any sort of process that we do going forward. So I'm here to answer any questions. Brendan Duncan, our traffic engineer, who's been part of this discussion, is here as well. And that's all I have.
Well, you answered my question. I wanted to know if there was any current developments that prompted this. Okay. Any other question?
I do have a question there. So I guess I want to have a better understanding about why the default didn't stay 2 access points. Because I'm wondering, what was the driver to make this be a 1 point? Was it topography? Was it natural areas? And the only analogy I can think of is, when you look at a system of roads where you've got the arterials and collectors, and then you've got cul-de-sacs getting into the collector, and if you've only got 1 point getting onto that arterial is going to get really congested. And so instead of distributing traffic to different points in your network by having 2 different, an egress and an entrance point, you're all now just funneling it all down 1 point.
Well,
and wouldn't that be putting a burden on one street?
Well, this change that's being proposed would not change how things are analyzed now, except it would provide an opportunity if less than 2 entryways were appropriate in a circumstance. It does not mean that if there is a circumstance where 2 access points or more are required in order for it to be a safe situation, the fire code as well as the traffic engineer review still has that ability to do so. But as you all know, we're in a built-out city with a lot of things in a very small area, and there are potentially circumstances where one access point may be appropriate for a unit that has more than 50 units in it. And so this takes into account that instead of it being arbitrarily through the zoning ordinance that it absolutely has to be 2, that the fire code as well as the sound engineering practices can dictate what that needs to be.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering still why the 2 access points weren't the default, and then burden of proof would have been on the applicant to demonstrate that they could only get 1.
I guess there's never a default that it was 2.
Okay.
So you could, if you were under 50, you could do 1. If you were over 50, you had to do 2. That was the mechanism that was there. And there was no leeway for any kind of engineering practice. The number seemed to be very arbitrary. So there is still that threshold for residential units. It's at 100 in the fire code. But if it's mixed use, if it's commercial, then it goes to 3 stories or 30 feet. So, and there's several others depending, if it's single family residential units, then you can have 30 single family. So it's much more specific versus our code that we had was 50. Didn't matter if you had a 50 foot of frontage, you're required to put 2 access points in there. Well, how do you do that?
Well,
And you don't necessarily need it. So it's not that we're not saying you won't have 2 access points. That's not what we're saying. We're just saying this allows us to actually look at a property, given the merits of any particular property, use that to dictate what the appropriate measure would be.
Thank you, that helps.
Any other questions?
I was here for the joint public hearing between what was said tonight and just now. That night and tonight. I have no more questions.
Okay. Any discussion? All right.
So can that go to consent?
I guess that's a question about consent for the next meeting.
It's fine with me.
Fine with me.
Okay. Any other business? Thank you. That wasn't a public hearing. Any other business? Council?
I sent something earlier today that I just want to know, do we want to put that on agenda? I would just like your feedback. There was a
What was the date?
out-of-cycle funding request
Oh,
that came forward and I'm sorry, I thought I had printed it out and I don't have it right in front of me.
And there were 2, Ms. Thomas sent one for AATF and
Right.
their annual,
oh, that's right, though.
That was around our policy for how we're going to do those.
but we
in
need
general.
to let her know if she can respond. And I'm looking at yours now.
Well, while Vice Mayor Hill is pulling it up, can I respond to the AATF one? Mayor Walker?
Yes.
So it's been traditionally our policy to support these initiatives in a wide variety of ways by person and table and whatnot. I know Councilor Signer has often stated his position, which I respect 110%. But I didn't know, did we need to talk about that here on the dais?
Well, I mean, we are all here, so it's just, if
Oh,
we
okay.
want.
Okay.
So I support sending, and I attended, Heather and I attended the dinner last year and plan to go again.
Issue. I support as well. I'll leave it at that.
And I'm fine. I do think that,
Has to
it's
be a
you and I
policy.
after this, we should probably set a little bit more of some guidelines around this for the next council, because I know that what's come up before is there's a number of things that we are asked if we'll sponsor tables for different events throughout the community, and there's certainly a limit. So I just think that's added to one of the many things I think that we should probably get a little more structure around as a council, so that we're not finding ourselves in this kind of circumstance. But for now, I'm fine with this.
I'm fine with it. I think where we ended up before was that we just started looking at other organizations' fundraisers that we also did. So we did, I think, like we did the
Food bank is what you were talking about?
there's food bank, and there was the
We do 100 Blood Man.
no, the innovation civic.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And
That's
so
right.
we did that. There was
Yeah.
no controversy about that. So it was just like we don't really have that much of a policy other than when it surfaces and there's a couple of counselors but I think it would be good to have.
A budget for sponsorships.
Yeah, like as long as we were already talking about what we talked about before, which was the individual counselor things. I think it would be nice to have some amount of money that was, for sponsorship of local events. That was basically the issue that I brought up before but I support this.
So maybe
and I've been as well. I think it's a great event.
It is a great event, but it might be good for the budget discussions coming up that we just start seeing a line item for sponsorships, because we've never seen one before.
Yeah. I would be in support of that.
Okay.
And
Just,
I'm just saying that Vice Mayor Hill's comment, what you put forth was the funding request for Black History Month Diamonds and Curls book tour. Is that what you're talking
So
about?
just, someone had approached us, and I ended up meeting with that person a few months ago. And then I really emphasized the point that it was important to go through our off-cycle budget process and not just come directly to us.
Right.
And so that's what Ms. Beauregard had set up, and she handed that kind of off to me last week. And so I just wanted to at least introduce it to make a decision on if we want it to come in front of us. Is it worth even, is this something that we want to have come at a regular council meeting? It's an agenda item, and that at that time, Ms. Brown Towns would come and actually present the request.
But as I understand it, because of the budget, off-cycle budget policy we have, the requests come in to our budget director.
Right, and all that's been done, and so what I share with you was the draft memo that Leslie had gotten to that point, and then Chrissy Hamill will kind of take that over from the budget office perspective. But it's pretty much at the point where it's up to us to decide, when do we want to put on an agenda? Is there support for putting it on an agenda?
I would have thought that on something like this, we would get a staff analysis before it even got through, which would say that it's probably not really that appropriate for us to be funding a book tour for a author. I mean, it seems like it opens the floodgates for many kinds of requests like this. It doesn't seem. I can't really think of any precedents where we would have done this in the past, and I don't. It seems like not a good precedent. That would be my concern. I mean.
Right, and there wasn't a recommendation in the draft memo, but there were some items mentioned in the communication, which was around that it is close to 100% of the cost of the program. So we might want to get some clarity around this, because some of the numbers have been changing. And then we might want to press on the outcomes and expected cost benefit of those. But just her suggestion, if we have a lot of questions, that we should have the requester come forward on a regular agenda if we want to hear more details.
Well, again, I just feel like the regular protocol would be to have staff present it. Then Chrissy Hamill would present it to us, and then we make the determinations right then and there. But that's how it's always been done in the past when there's ever been a off-budget cycle request. I don't think, we never jump the gun, so to speak. And that they usually are criteria in our budget policy as to whether or not something was appropriate or not.
Well, I think if a counselor is interested in bringing it up as to potentially support, then that can be one of the avenues, but getting staff to look at it, right?
And in this case, I honestly was listening to the request and advising the requester on the appropriate avenue, in which this case for me was the off-budget cycle, process.
Well, I guess I have no objections to having it go through this off-budget cycle request process, but I'm not prepared to make a decision yet on whether or not I approve it.
Oh, no, and we weren't going to make that decision tonight. It was more, can we at least align on even having it coming in front of us based on what you've seen? Or that can answer the questions. Do we want to have it on a council agenda?
It just seems irregular, because Leslie's email says, "I am leaving this in your hands to discuss with council about adding to an agenda." And it just seems like this would open up the floodgates to.
Well, part of it is just timing of transitions right now at this point, if we're being really honest. I mean,
Anyway, it seems like it ought to.
Well, I'm happy to circle back with Chrissy, and so the preference would be to a staff
I think
person.
it should go through staff.
Right, okay.
Not,
No, I don't disagree.
Yeah.
And then, but we're okay with having it come to us as a recommendation or not recommendation through staff's lens.
That's usually what happens.
I know there was a request at the last meeting for a fund, and I don't have it with me, but it was stated that we should start having proposals with those items that come before the council for any type of, what do you call it, off-cycle budgeting or whatever you want to call it. This is my first time going through this process here. But I think when we talk about budgeting for sponsorships and different things like that, that within the 2021 budget, we do create a line item that has that specifically for that, where you have the dollar set aside for that. But things that are, on an annual basis that you do want to fund, even though it is off cycle, but I think like a lot of things you do fund on an annual basis, we need to go ahead and identify that in the 2021 budget ahead of time.
Right.
And
In
then
this case,
still
this is
have
just like a
then-
one-off
and then still
thing.
have a line item for other things that may come up that, you want to support. So we don't have to
And I
go
think-
through this, but
Right, and this was, I think, is just a one-time unique thing that did not make it through a regular, nonprofit assessment. But it's had to go through, so that person had to show that they have a nonprofit partner who
Right.
can be considered, and even if they're out of state, and so that work was all done through staff. But I don't think that we got it to the point where there's a clear recommendation, so I understand that. So I guess we would want to go back to staff and have them provide a recommendation based on the guidelines that have been done. I'm sorry, I've
Right,
only been
right.
sitting through this a couple of times myself, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I would understand that to be, at least what we've done in the past, and that OFS budget cycle request was, the source of funds was often the council discretionary
Right,
fund.
that's what was being recommended, yeah.
So that is why it does come to council. It all would have to still come to council, because we have to decide whether it's worth giving our money to that. But, I mean, yeah, I would just think that it would come through staff.
Okay. I think it literally was a function of just timing
Right,
with
timing.
people moving, so, I will circle back with staff on that.
And I brought up the Charlottesville Winneba Foundation that I had discussed a request with them. And I just sent it, not for an answer tonight, but I just wanted to bring it back up publicly. And I sent an email to council and Dr. Richardson a letter that was sent to me yesterday, an updated letter. And they are planning to do 2 trips for 2020 and would like to, because taking the number that we took last cycle was too many at one time, but they would still like to take, around the same number of people, so increasing that to 60. So the request is there. Nana would like to attend the next council meeting to discuss the request, so I would just like to know if there, is support, if you all can review that over the next week or so and just see if it's, if him coming to present to us is something that you all would be open to. Okay.
And so is this coming from the sister city's budget?
No, it would be coming from the equity fund.
Proposals that come with the equity fund.
Okay.
And you said you'll get us something in writing this week.
Yeah, I just sent it.
Oh,
Yeah, and I'll send they sent the budget and what the 2 travel options are, so I'll send that out too.
I guess it might even help to have like what's the running balance of like the equity fund and of the council discretionary fund whenever something's being asked of it as a drawdown, so we know what we have left.
So we had that after the discussion with the schools.
it should be from, well, let me not quote because I could be wrong.
We can get
Line
that.
item was
Yeah.
453.
And then, and just for the future council, it just might be an interesting, good idea to think about what is the strategic vision for the equity fund. But, because is it just something that's always there to draw upon when needed, or is it something that is going to be targeted? That's just a thought.
Is that it?
Go ahead.
No, I'm done. You got it.
Eliminate the equity fund.
Right.
Go ahead.
Moving on. Moving.
All right, what do we have next? So, anybody here to speak for the, second matters by the public? All right, no? Okay. Meeting adjourned.
Wow.
Wow.